All right, good evening everyone. I'm Nicholas Sheketov, this is Derek here. Macman Insurance is a family-owned agency up in Fairfield, Connecticut. My father Alan started it back in 1996. Cool story about Macman, each letter stands for a member of our family. It's Melissa, Amy, Joe, Claudia, Matthew, Annie, and Nicholas. So yeah, we're up in Fairfield, been around for about 20 years or so. Quick intro about myself. I went to school down in Florida. I'm originally from Fairfield, used to live in Stamford. Graduated in 2010, worked for a finance company for a couple of years, followed by mortgage industry, Bank of America. I came up here in the fall of 2014, going into my 5th year now working for Macman.
I'm Derek. I'm not one of the letters, just an in-law at this point. But I've been in health insurance for a little over 3 years. I helped open the Obamacare exchanges here in Connecticut, and then worked for a private exchange in New York, and joined Macman in 2018.
So like Andy said, we specialize solely in medical health insurance, along with employee benefits, ancillary lines like group dental, vision, long short-term disability. We do not do the things that Andy does, and he does not do the things we do, and that's why we've had a pretty good partnership over the last few years.
So the individual market here in Connecticut, I'm sure you've heard of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, or however you want to call it. It's kind of been a domino effect since Obamacare started. A lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff. We're down to 2 carriers left in the market, Connecticut and Anthem Blue Cross. You can get them through Access Health, which is the Obamacare exchange. They manage the enrollment process, servicing, cancellation, all that. Or you can go to Connecticut directly. There's an open enrollment period every year, which I'm sure you heard about, November 1st to December 15th. Typically it's more like January 15th, February 15th. It's kind of like our tax season, so we're working like 70, 80 hours a week to manage our current block of business, and then obviously servicing all the new business coming in. Because of kind of what's happened with rates and the fact that networks are now Connecticut only, we've started to look at alternative solutions that are a good fit depending on your employment status.
Yeah, so if we go back a couple of years, 2016 we had 5 carriers in the individual market. What had happened is a lot of those bigger carriers ended up leaving the market. That's why we're down to only 2 carriers. There are no national networks anymore for individual plans. And the rates in Connecticut are age banded, so it's based on how old you are. So they've gotten very expensive. One of the things that we did were we were introduced to these types of plans that work a little differently through these different associations. There's pros and cons to them, but one of the benefits that they give is that they use a national network. It's something you can use in all 50 states, and its rating system is what's called composite rated, which simply means that there's one rate for a single, one rate for a family. Certain demographic that it makes a lot of sense for are people who are older or larger families. Again, we've been using them for a couple of years now. It's just one of the solutions that we were able to find in the individual market as it started to crashing down a bit.
There's kind of a common, that's kind of like the wrap up for the individual market, but there's a common misconception that you have to have this like large business to have access to the small group market. All you need is just another full-time W-2 employee on staff. They can't be your wife, but as long as they're full-time, working 30 hours a week, making minimum wage, you have access to the market. The real benefits of the small group market is that you have access to national networks, you have coverage in all 50 states, and the rates are a bit more competitive as well because there's just more carriers, so there's more competition. You can get 5 to 10% better rates, which can make a big difference when you're paying $2 grand a month. We had a pretty good example of this the other day. A self-employed person had given me a ring. They did not choose to sign up for a plan during open enrollment. They just wanted to self-insure themselves. In February, the father who owned the business got diagnosed with cancer. He did not have any access to the individual market because we're outside of open enrollment. So he was looking at a stretch from February to January 1 where he wasn't going to have any coverage at all. So we figured out that because his son was going to be joining the firm to try to help him through the treatment process, we were able to run some payroll, show that he was eligible, show the son is coming on as a full-time employee, get him covered, get him access to a national network, and get him all set.
So that was a good example of a small group that we were able to help. On a larger scale, one of the things that we see when we're introduced to groups where there may be 20, 30, 50 plus employees is we'll be introduced to a group and they offer one plan for all the employees. One of the strategies that we tend to use when we work with, still small group, but larger than 2 to 10, not all employees have the same needs. We'll run into cases where you may have a group of 30 people, and more than half of them go to the doctor once a year for a physical, and that's it. And then you may have some people who may have an ongoing illness, going through maternity coverage, or would need maternity coverage, major surgery, and not all plans are going to make sense for everyone. One of the strategies that we implement with small groups is offering a base level type plan where the employer's contribution can be based off of that, so they're keeping their costs under control, and then giving buy-up options for the other employees. So it allows the employer to keep their costs under control because they know that their contribution level is based off of one plan, but the employees can always buy up to a better plan if they need better coverage. So that's just one of the different strategies that we would use with groups that are a little larger.
So just to kind of recap what kind of solutions are available in that market, traditionally you're just working with a carrier directly. Very similar to the individual market, it's just direct to carrier. The rates are based on your age and where you live. Again, the rates are a little bit better just because there's more competition in the market. But because of just kind of how rates have gone and the market has gone, some alternative solutions have popped up in that market as well. One being level funded products. So basically there's a very small amount of medical underwriting that goes into it, so not everything's guaranteed issue. They just take the prescriptions that every employee is taking. Obviously it's all HIPAA compliant. And then based on the risk and how healthy the group is, they can get really strong rates. And throughout the year, if they have a strong year claims-wise, they can get a refund at the end of the year. So you're saving like 30–40% on the front end, and then getting a refund at the end of the year if your claims are doing okay. And then there's a new product launching this summer in Connecticut called reference-based pricing. Basically what it's doing is you don't have any network at all. So you just go to the doctor. Your plan pays a set percentage above what Medicare would pay. Medicare has the largest network of doctors around, so they are already getting reimbursed at that level, and the plan is just saying, hey, we'll pay you 30–50% more than that, and deal with it. So there's some pros and cons of that, but just some alternative ways to look at benefits for your business.
Another thing, yes.
Is that available for individuals or just?
No, just for group.
Yeah. Okay.
Other thing, when the groups get a little bigger, just one other type of option. This is if you're a much larger group. What are called PEOs, professional employer organizations, which we work with a lot of them as well. The way those work is, you have a group of 50, you have a group of 100, a group of 150, and you all pool together under the same tax ID, so you become a group of 50,000, much larger volume, greater benefits that can be offered. Typically, it's with a larger group because not only are you getting the health benefits, but you're also incorporating the workers' comp, the payroll, the general liability. So it doesn't work for all groups. But I think that the point we're trying to make is, with the way the industry is constantly changing, carriers are going to come up with different types of, products and solutions, and we work with all of them. So it's something that we're able to find, regardless of what type of client we're working with. The other thing to completely round out a full benefit package is we do a lot of employer-sponsored and voluntary benefits for dental, vision. This past renewal, there was a group that had about a 40% rate increase on a silver level plan, and what we ended up doing was moving the whole group to a bronze plan, higher deductible, but threw in critical illness, accident, hospital indemnity, which lowered their premium 50% from where it was. Group threw in an HRA, helped pay for some of the expenses, and it saved the employees money, saved the employer money. It's just different ways where you have to kind of piece together benefits sometimes just because of what our market has left us in right now.
So one of the other ways that our brokerage in particular is looking at kind of differentiating ourselves for small businesses and even self-employed folks is offering some value-added services. One of them is HR 360. We are kind of our sweet spot is like the 2 to 50 employee range, especially in like the 2 to 10 employee range. You don't really have someone on staff who's an HR professional. It's just someone who's like been casted off as the HR professional. So HR 360 allows you to have an online library You can customize it to your specific state, your specific industry. It'll give you info on COBRA, labor laws, minimum wage increases, all automatically into your email inbox or blogs, however you want it. They also have tools for like creating an employee handbook once you actually launch a real startup business and need that, or a salary benchmarking tool if you're looking to hire someone and trying to figure out how much to pay them. So another cool add-on service.
So lastly, just to kind of wrap everything up, want to give everyone something to kind of take away with them. We've kind of given you a lot of information about what the individual small group market looks like, what the carriers are doing, but if there's something everyone can take away, one of the things we do besides everything Derek just mentioned with like the HR 360 and giving, all of these tools and great pieces of, advice, we try and educate people as much as possible. The industry as a whole has shifted so much, not even going back, 5-10 years, just in the last couple of years. This here is a screenshot of an article from April of last year, 2018, on how the two largest hospital systems, Yale and Hartford Health, have purchased all of these facilities, and doctors' offices, these different facilities end up billing services through the hospital, which they charge more money. One of the things that we try to educate people about is if you have the ability to go to a freestanding facility that does not bill through the hospital, it can be significantly cheaper. All blood work, unless you're specifically getting tested for something that has to be done in a doctor's office, always go to a Quest Diagnostics. They discount it 80 to 90% every single time versus having it done in the doctor's office, which is owned by Yale New Haven, and then they send it to a hospital lab and you'll get a bill for $800, whereas that same exact blood work, if you have it done at Quest, it gets discounted to 50, 60 bucks. Certain scans, if you're able to go to like an advanced radiology that doesn't bill through the hospital, a lot of facilities are being purchased by hospitals. So if you're able to go to freestanding labs, freestanding facilities, it's going to be cheaper for you as a consumer, it's cheaper to the insurance carrier, which then means down the road, renewals and rates are going to be cheaper, it'll trickle down. The other thing that we try and tell people, the difference between the urgent care and the emergency room. This is crazy because we have so many examples of this. Guy last year who is a younger father who had a kid who was playing pickup basketball in his driveway. Kid comes down on his ankle, starts crying hysterically. The father panics, takes him to the emergency room. Goes to the emergency room, he waits in the ER for an hour, eventually gets an x-ray, it's not broken, they give him an ice pack and an Advil, and 3 weeks later he gets hit with a $1,700 bill. The urgent care or walk-in clinics, we tell people, look up where your closest urgent care or walk-in clinic is. If you have, a minor cut, a minor burn, something that you don't have to go to the emergency room for. A lot of health plans now incentivize people to go to the urgent care because they throw in co-pays as opposed to things going to the deductible. Unless you're on a really rich gold or platinum level plan, most emergency room visits are going to be deductible and co-insurance, and it's guaranteed to be $1,000 right off the bat. That's before you even get seen by a doctor. It's astronomically expensive. So we tell people, if you can go to an urgent care versus an emergency room, it's smart to do that from both the insurance carrier side and the consumer side.
One last kind of tip here, and it's kind of become more popular just because of recent news and trying to increase transparency on prescription drug costs. It's really one of the main drivers of the reason that health insurance is so expensive. GoodRx's smartphone app, website, coupon card, where you can basically get cash prices for prescription drugs. A lot of the generic drugs out there, you're paying more with your insurance and your copays than you actually would pay if you just use GoodRx. This chart kind of just broke it down pretty well. Basically paying 3 or 4 or 5, or the more expensive drugs could be like 50 to 100 bucks more just because you're using insurance versus paying cash. So it's literally just a smartphone app if you're tech savvy. You download it, you look at competitive prices within a certain mile radius of your zip code, and you pay less.
Yeah, and lastly, really lastly, the best thing anyone could do, the drug companies are doing things, the hospitals are doing things, the insurance companies and carriers are doing things. The best thing anyone could do is try and take care of yourself as best as possible. A lot of larger groups are focusing a lot on corporate wellness, prevention, eating well, exercising, things that you're doing now so that not, next year or the year after, but a decade from now, 2 decades from now, overall cost of healthcare could go down if you take better care of yourself. There are larger companies that offer these plans. They're typically with groups of 100 plus, so nothing on an individual or even small group level. But they give all the employees Fitbits, and they do these things where you partner with someone else, and then you find that people are parking on the other end of the parking lot, so they have to walk further, and they're taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator, and it brings in more of a healthy sort of lifestyle. So for people in their 30s and 40s, when you get to your 50s and 60s, you're not having these ongoing illnesses where you can prevent some of those things just by living healthier in your younger age. So that's the last tidbit I would give away. Any questions? Fantastic.
Oh, yeah, one more there.
What's that app called?
GoodRx.
GoodRx.
Yeah, it's an app website. You ever go to like an urgent care or hospital, there's typically cards as well. You just present that as where you're picking up your prescriptions and you get a lower price.
You can literally just go on your phone, type in GoodRx into Google, and you can type in the drug you want, and it'll show you different pharmacies, and what the cost is based on which pharmacy you go to. There's coupons, you can do it all on the phone. It pretty much allows them, because they're buying it in such bulk, to offer major discounts in some cases. A lot of these drugs people buy from Canada or buy from other countries. When it gets through the U.S. and the way our system works, it inflates the cost of them. And this is just one way where they're able to kind of discount them. It's direct to consumer. It doesn't involve any insurance carrier. There's no middleman essentially. So it's just a tool that we like to tell people about, and people save a lot of money. Same thing with larger drugs. Like high-end injectable drugs. Check out the manufacturer. There's discounts and assistance programs. We know people who take $2,000 injectable drugs for like rheumatoid arthritis, Enbrel, Humira, Remicade, things like that, where they can be $1,500, $2,000 per month. And if you go to the manufacturer directly, they're able to offer assistance programs, not even income driven, where the first 6 months you don't have to pay anything, or you have to hit a certain copay, and they give you 11 months. I mean, depending on what company it is, it's always worth looking into it, because there's other solutions out there than just going to the pharmacy, putting it through insurance, and having to hit a $7,900 max out of pocket.
You're telling me that made in China prescription medication is on the way to go? Oh, thank you though.
Aren't a lot of the urgent cares owned by doctors, groups, or hospitals? They're not really independent?
Some of them are. You'll see, of course, Yale is on a lot of them. So there's definitely urgent cares that will associate themselves with the hospital. There are some that are freestanding. I know the AFC, which there's a few of those are freestanding. It's always wise, especially if you get a new plan, if your group renews, let's say April 1, and you know what your new plan is, to find out which ones. So people do have to kind of be a little more proactive and kind of take in ownership for what they have, because what you might have done last year or 5 years ago may not be the best thing to do now. So if you Google urgent care and you put in your zip code and 6 of them pop up, you might have to spend a half hour on a Saturday, figure out which ones are through the hospital. But you're right, there are some that will still be attached to the hospital, and we've seen cases where they'll go to an urgent care and they'll bill it as a hospital, and it's wrong. And and if there was a way to stop it,
And the hospitals that are picking up high percentages of Medicaid are making up for that on the people that are paying the bill on the other side. So I don't know if Field, New Haven, or Hartford, but if they've got a high percentage, this happens in New York, in Montefiore. Huge Medicaid stuff, so now they have the suburban hospitals that they're absorbing because they can charge more in the suburbs than they can, and recoup some of that Medicaid money in the city.
Yeah, no, that same thing happens in Connecticut as well.
Yeah, one more question. Lorena, right now.
So for those people that are using the access, the healthcare for the Affordable Care Act, when should they begin to contact you to see if you can find them a better deal? I know you don't want them to call while you're in the middle of your 80-hour work week.
No, that is the time.
That's
So,
the
yeah,
start at that specific
what
time?
happens?
So,
Yeah, so what happens is
What's it called?
in October, people will get their renewals. It's all for a January 1
Okay.
renewal. All individual plans will renew January 1st. So yeah, pretty much from mid-October through January. That's
soon as you
just
get it,
our
call you
that's
guys.
just our season. So,
okay.
but yeah, that would be the time.
All right, very good. Well, thank you very much.